Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tathaiva Satyaki Parthai Pujitascha Vibanditaha Nishasadasanenyecha Pujita Paryupasata Tata Eva. Similarly, Satyaki, Paratai, by the sons of Pritha, Pujita, worshipped, Cha, and Abhivandita, welcomed, Nishashada, sat down, Asane, on a seat, Anye, the others, Cha, also, Pujita, worshipped, Paryupasata, sat around. Satyaki also accepted a seat of honor after receiving worship and welcome from the Pandavas, and the Lord's other companions, being duly honored, sat down in various places. Kritam samagatya krita bivadanas tayati hardadra drishabhirambita apristavamstam kushalam sahasnasham pitrisvasaram pariprishta bandava. The Lord then went to see his aunt, Queen Kunti. He bowed down to her, and she embraced him, her eyes moist with great affection. Lord Krishna inquired from her and her daughter-in-law, Draupadi, about their welfare, and they in turn questioned him at length about his relatives in Dwarka. Purport. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur envisions that as Lord Krishna was sitting on his seat, he saw his aunt Kunti approaching in great eagerness to see him. He then rose at once, quickly went up to her and offered his obeisances. Her eyes moistened with extreme love. She embraced him and smelled his head. We are reading today from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 58, entitled Krishna Marries 5 Princesses, texts 6 and 7. The Pandavas who were great devotees of Krishna, the eldest brother Yudhisthira was truly a well-wisher for everyone. But yet so many injustices were committed to them. This is explained in great detail in Mahabharata. Kunti was the sister of Vasudeva, who became the father of Krishna and Balaram. Surasena, their father, promised Kunti Bhoja, who was his relative and who had no children, that if he ever had a daughter, he would place her under his care. Vasudev's sister, whose name was Prita, was thereby given to the care of Kunti Bhoja. And thus she was called by the name Kunti. And we know the story, how she was so beautiful in her character, in her actions, in her words, in her physical appearance, in every way. Durvasa Muni came to visit King Kunti Bhoja. And as we were speaking last night, Durvasa Muni, son of Anasuya and Atri Muni, was an expansion of Rudra, and he was easily pleased and easily angered. When he was angry, it was devastating. And when he was pleased, it was very nice. So generally, when he came to a place, it was a very fearful situation. It's like when an important guest comes, there's usually some fear. You don't want to displease him. But when it's Durvas Muni, it's a very serious subject matter. So Kunti Bhoja had his lovely daughter Kunti take care of him. And by her graciousness, her kindness, and her absolute genuineness, she just had nothing but good inside and out. Sometimes great sages like Durvasa, if they detect any anartha or unwanted quality in you, they know exactly how to make it explode. But Kunti had no qualities except her goodness. So she served him so pleasingly, with so much effort and care, that he gave her this benediction, a mantra where she could call any demigod, any of the devas. She just meditates, chants the mantra, they will immediately appear. She was just a young girl, very small. After Durvasa Muni left with this blessing, she was just curious. Because a young girl being given a mantra like this, naturally you want to try it. So one morning she saw the sun rising, such a beautiful sunrise. And she meditated on Surya and chanted the mantra, and Surya came. And she didn't know what to do actually, because Surya is a very powerful deva, and she's a little girl. So she served him nicely and offered prayers to him. And he said, if I come, I must give you a child. That is my rule. But she said, how can you give me child? I'm just a little girl. He said, by my deva-like powers, you will remain a virgin. And then a child was put in her womb and was born really quickly, because devas don't have to go through all these months of labor and like earthly people. And the child was born from her ear. And therefore he was given the name Karna. But she didn't know how to explain this to her relatives. Now think of yourself being a little girl, and all of a sudden there's this little baby who has golden earrings and a chest plate. So she was confused. She made a little basket and very lovingly put the baby in the basket and prayed to Surya, please protect your child. And then she put him in Ganga and he flowed away. And a charioteer named Adiratha discovered a little baby floating in a river. And he and his wife Radha were childless. So they've considered this to be a great blessing. And they loved this child as their own child and raised him with such affection. Meanwhile, later on, the great King Pandu, born of Vyasadeva, his two brothers Dhritarashtra and Vidura. But of the three, Pandu was the most heroic and powerful. Vidura was the most saintly, but he was disqualified from the throne. Dhritarashtra was the eldest, but because he was blind, he was not qualified. Meanwhile, Pandu was so powerful that he literally took his armies and conquered the entire earth. But he was fair. He was a man of dharma. He didn't exploit. He didn't unnecessarily plunder. He actually brought real justice in places where there was so much injustice. And he came to the Swayamvara, and there Kunti gave her heart to him. They were married. He also married another named Madri. You know the story. But somehow or other, Pandu made a serious mistake. After he conquered the world, he went with his two wives into the forest just to live peacefully. And somehow or other, the way this world works is whoever we are, we sometimes make mistakes. And sometimes those mistakes can create such reversals. So he was cursed that if he ever touches a woman, he would die. So they wanted children. And Kunti Devi explained the blessing she had. Now it can actually be used for a really good purpose. And Pandu said, call Yamaraj, Dharmaraj. He's the most pure, sinless Mahajan, the upholder of the highest religious principles. And from Yamaraj, Yudhishthira was born. Most powerful of the Devas is Vayu, the Lord of the Wind. So on Pandu's recommendation, Kunti called Vayu and Bhima was born. And from Indra, Arjuna. Kunti gave the mantra to Madri, and she meditated on the Aswini Kumars, two brothers, and from them, Nakula Sahadev. Then Pandu made another mistake, and he died. This is Mahabharata. So, Kunti now, Madri went with her husband Pandu. Kunti wanted to, but the rishis and sages in the forest told her that somebody has to take care of these 5 children. So she brought them back to Hastinapur. But during that time, Duryodhana, the son of Dhritarashtra, was the center of everyone's attention. Gandhari was pregnant. Gandhari was the wife of Dhritarashtra. At the same time that Kunti. But what happened is Kunti gave birth to Yudhisthira first. And Gandhari later became disturbed. And out of anger, she hit her womb, and a hard lump came out. And she didn't know what to do. She was about to throw it away. Then Vyasadeva said, I already gave you a benediction, you will have 100 sons. So he made 100 pots and put some ghee in it. And then by his mystical powers, that lump divided into 100 parts, and each one was put in a pot. And the firstborn was Duryodhana. And as soon as he was born, everything possible inauspicious started happening everywhere around. And this little child, a baby, little babies, they cry. They go, Well, when Duryodhana was born, he didn't cry. He shrieked. It was horrible. It's like he was born. It was like, people's, it's like, it was evil. It was just total evil coming out of him. People were shocked. And all these terrible things were happening everywhere around. And Vidura and others told Dhritarashtra, you should get rid of this son. You already have 99 others, but get rid of this son. Because he's going to do nothing but cause horrible, horrible consequences to his life. But Duryodhana was Dhritarashtra was attached to his firstborn. And soon, from the other pots, all these little children started getting born, and they were the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra. Now, while Pandava was in the forest, Pandhu, with Kunti and his 5 children, they were there for many years. Pandhu actually was very much loved by Dhritarashtra. Because after all, he's the one who created the Kuru kingdom in the way it was. And he entrusted it all to Dhritarashtra until his eldest son, Yudhisthira, was old enough to take the throne. So that was the agreement. Dhritarashtra would rule the kingdom until the rightful king was of age. But while the Pandavas were gone, Duryodhana, he was so wicked, even as a little boy, and so envious. But at the same time, he was incredibly skillful. He had a brilliant intelligence. He was great at fighting with weapons. He was very, very managerially inclined. He could get almost anything done. So it was very impressive. And because he was like the eldest of the princes, in the absence of the Pandavas, he was getting so much attention. And in this world, it's human nature. The more we get, the more we become attached to what we have. Detachment is very simple. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudhatma karatahamiti manyate. Detachment is to understand whatever I have is God's property. Whatever intelligence, whatever abilities, whatever influence I have over others. It's all given to me by the higher power of God's grace. Nothing is mine. Bhoktaram jagatapasam sarvalokamaheshwaram suhradam sarvabhutanam gyatvam shantim rachjati. Krishna tells in Gita what the acharyas declare to be the peace formula. Because people in this world want peace. There's so much war and so much conflict, so much unhealthy, destructive, envious competition in this world. And there's so many organizations and campaigns to bring about peace. And many of them are very helpful. But according to Bhagavad Gita, they are only dealing with the symptoms of the problem. However much you treat symptoms, if the core disease is still present, then another symptom will come, and then another and another. And sometimes there are just so many symptoms you can't even deal with them anymore. So Krishna tells the peace formula. He goes right to the very core of the heart of the disease that disturbs people's peace. And he explains, one can attain true everlasting peace if they just live by three principles. That Bhagavan, Sri Krishna, is the proprietor of everything that exists. Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. Sarva Loka means every planet in every creation is the property of God. He's the creator, he's the maintainer, and ultimately he withdraws it. It's according to his will. Nothing is mine. And ultimately the Lord is the supreme enjoyer of everything. Samsadir Haritoshana. That means if everything is God's property, everything should be used in harmony with God's will. And Surada Sarvabhutana. And that one Supreme Lord, who is the Father, the Mother of every living being, is the most intimate, ever well-wishing, best friend of all beings. This is very important. We can be happy in any situation if we just have realization of this, that Krishna is our ever well-wishing friend, not only to us, but to everyone. Krishna loves everyone, infinitely, forever. He's not partial to anyone, but he reciprocates according to how we live. So Krishna has revealed this secret to us. It's so simple. But Duryodhana, he was so much intoxicated and infatuated by the respect and the power he was getting because he had no rival. His father was blind and old and disqualified in so many ways, and there he was, the next ruler. And among all the children, he was the greatest in everything. And after Pandu passed away, Kunti couldn't take care of those children in the forest anymore without her husband. So she brought them back to the kingdom. And Dhritarashtra, when he heard his brother Pandu had died, he was actually very grief-stricken. But now Yudhisthira, he was completely different than Duryodhana. He had brilliant intelligence. He was expert at everything he did, like Duryodhana, but he was humble and he was respectful to everyone and he was everyone's well-wisher and he was never thinking about himself. He was always thinking of everyone else. So everyone in Hastinapur fell in love with Yudhisthira. And Bhima, who was actually born the same day as Duryodhana, they were equals. Yudhisthira was older. Bhima was so strong. He used to play with the Kurus, and he would say, "All 100 of you, let's wrestle." And these Kurus, they were really arrogant little kids. They were spoiled like anything. They were expecting to be the kings, the rulers, the everything. And Bhima would just throw them around like toys. And this really insulted them. Not only does everyone love Yudhisthira, but Bhima always defeats us. And Bhima, he would defeat them, and he had no animosity, he had no envy. For him, it was just play. He would just beat them up. That's what little Kshatriya kids do. But it was just play for him. There was no ill feelings. But for Duryodhana and his brothers, it was intolerable. Duryodhana completely was conquered by envy. Because he wanted to be in the center. And for a while, he was in the center. And he was enjoying it. And now, someone else is coming that's taking his position. And not only that, but Yudhisthira was the rightful heir to the throne that Duryodhana craved to have. He couldn't tolerate being anyone's servant. He wanted to be the master, the controller, the enjoyer. Usually in this world, you're not envious of somebody who could do something that you don't know how to do. You're usually envious of somebody who does the same thing you do, but better. Yes? Just like, if you're very proud of being a good dancer, and somebody else is a good scientist, you're not envious of that. You can tolerate them being a good scientist. But if somebody dances better than you and gets louder applause, and more people looking and affectionate, it's like fire going in your heart. Can't tolerate it. And similarly, if you're a really good scientist and you're getting all kinds of grants and people are praising you and everything like that, you can easily tolerate a good dancer. But another scientist, that's human tendency. Where we're getting our enjoyment of certain types of adoration, distinction, profit, it's very, very difficult to tolerate somebody who's actually getting more attention and getting more profit and being more successful. I read a couple years ago, one musician, he got an award of the #1 best song that he wrote and sang of all time for a particular form of music. And there were hundreds and thousands of songs by some of the greatest artists. But his was voted to be the number one song of all, the greatest song of all time. So he was interviewed. This is the most prestigious award a musician can get in one sense. He wrote and sung the greatest song of all time. They asked him, what is your feeling getting this award? He said, nothing. Because in a couple of years, some other song will be voted better than mine. It's true. Records are broken. Krishna tells us in the Gita that our real happiness should not be in the results of what we do, but in the quality of the consciousness in which we do it. Krishna tells Arjuna, do not be attached to victory or defeat, success or failure, pleasure or pain, honor and dishonor. Be attached to Dharma. And the highest Dharma is bhakti. Yat karosi rashnasi yajjohoshi dadasya. Whatever you do, do it for my pleasure, Krishna says. It is our devotion that pleases Krishna. There's so many examples of this. Duryodhana himself, I'm skipping way ahead from this story. But when the Pandavas and the Kurus, when it was inevitable that there was going to be a war, Duryodhana wanted to get Krishna on his side. And he was so expert. He was really brilliant. Sometimes we just think of Duryodhana as being just a mad, crazy, envious person. He was. But he was also, in order to get his way, he could be the most refined, charitable, intelligent person. And he knew how to win people over. He would treat them with such respect and give them so many gifts that they were obliged to be on his side. So he invited Krishna to his palace. And he had the best dancers and the best cooks and the best interior decorators, and he had the most wonderful gifts, everything, just to show Krishna how much he's going so far out of his way to give Krishna happiness. Then Krishna's going to, when he asks Krishna a favor after he's doing all that, Krishna's going to be obliged to be on his side. But Krishna doesn't care anything for things. He's concerned with our love and devotion. All the preparations were made. And Krishna knows just how to teach good lessons. He walked right by Duryodhana's house. The whole reception's there waiting. He just walked by, didn't even look. Now that's an insult. And then he went to Vidura's house. Vidura wasn't even expecting him. Kunti Devi was living with Vidura while the Pandavas were in exile. And Vidura didn't have anything prepared for him. And according to the story, they just gave Krishna a banana. And according to how some people tell that story, Vidura and his wife, they were so nervous that Krishna just showed up at their house that they peeled the banana and threw the banana out and gave Krishna the peel. And Krishna ate it. And he was completely satisfied. He was more happy with this little offering of love than all of the things, the crowns and the jewels and the sumptuous food that Duryodhana had prepared for him. Because Krishna sees the intent. The only thing that satisfies the heart is to love and be loved. And any gift, its value is only in the love in which it is given and received. That's the only value to the heart. The material worth of something can give some fleeting attachment to the mind and senses. Can't touch the heart. So Duryodhana and his brothers, they were so envious because everything they wanted the affection, they wanted the respect, they wanted the attention of in any way from all the citizens, and they were getting it. And they loved it, and they were attached to it. And here comes the Pandavas, and they didn't even want it. It just came to them anyway because they were so good. So Duryodhana, even though the Pandavas were their well-wishers, he started making plots to murder them. They're brothers. In those days, cousins were called brothers. So they decided, Shakuni was the brother of Gandhari. And he was a really angry person too. Because Bhima brought Gandhari, and Shakuni wanted her to marry Pandu, but instead she got married to Dhritarashtra. So he was really angry. He was really intelligent, but he used it all in the wrong ways. So Shakuni and Duryodhana were always making these plots of how to destroy the Pandavas. And they're intelligent. Usually, what you are most attached to becomes either a strength or a weakness. That's how Maya works. If Maya sees you have a weakness of a particular type of attachment, she will try to exploit that and use that to destroy you. Hari Hari. Param Dristvani Vartate. Bhakti is to experience a higher taste so we can actually tolerate and overcome these weaknesses. So Bhima, he was really strong. He didn't have any physical weaknesses at all. But he loved to eat. Srila Prabhupada explains one name of Bhima is Brikodar. Brikodar means one who can eat like a hungry wolf. He could eat massive sums of food. But the difference between Bhima and us, he can eat so much. But then with the power and strength he gets from that food, he could do supernatural activities. If we try to eat like Bhima, we'll get sick and fall asleep. So Bhima likes to eat a lot. So they took him on an excursion to play on the banks of the Ganga, and they made these delicious cakes and filled them with poison. More poison than what hundreds of people could possibly. It would kill hundreds of people, grown men, and Bhima was just a boy. And he ate it all. And he still played all day. And then at the end of the day, he kind of felt sleepy because of the poison. And he laid down, and they thought he was dead, and they threw him in the Ganga. But Krishna's always Kaunteya Purati Janihi Name Bhakta Pranashati. Krishna's always there for his devotees. And whatever happens to a devotee, it's always for the good, whether they live or whether they die, because ultimately there's no death. Sometimes people get confused. How is it that a devotee can die in a way that appears to be before their time? Or how sometimes even suffering? from our perspective, we can calculate in terms of years, in terms of pleasure and pain. But if Krishna wants to protect us, nothing can harm us. And even if something does harm us, if we have taken shelter of Krishna, if we're dear to Krishna, then He will give the soul the highest rewards. Everyone has to die. What is history? History is just all these narrations about people who are now dead. Yes. You live 100 years maybe. In England, if you get to be 100 years, the Queen personally gives you a gift. Something to live for. It's a good thing, but how long are you going to be able to enjoy that gift? So the Srimad Bhagavatam tells us, better one moment of full consciousness than a long, long life wasted in material consciousness. Some of the greatest people throughout history live very short lives, but they changed the whole world by the qualities of their life. So Krishna had a purpose for Bhima. So while he was underwater, these snakes started biting him. Now for most of us, we don't want to get bit by snakes. But these snakes neutralized the poison that was in Bhima. And he was empowered. And he came out of the water more powerful than ever before. So Duryodhana, it was all kept secret what they tried to do. It made them even more determined. And then Duryodhana was telling his father, Dhritarashtra, they must be killed. They have to be killed. Otherwise, they're going to be the kings. What about me? Dhritarashtra said, what about you? Yudhishthira's a good older brother. He said, no, I'll commit suicide if he becomes king. And you'll be responsible. So Dhritarashtra was really, he was in Maya. He was under the influence of his son. And he was attached to his son. And by associating with his son, he was becoming like that. And meanwhile, Bhishma and Vidura, they were watching this whole thing happening and they were brokenhearted by it. Vidura was always giving Dhritarashtra good advice. Vidura was the younger brother. He was the most qualified. But just because of some technicality in his birth, he was not given certain rights. But he was the most qualified. He was completely the well-wisher of everyone. He had no animosity, no enmity in his heart. He loved Krishna. Krishna was his nephew, kind of. He loved everyone. And he was always giving Dhritarashtra good advice. And Dhritarashtra would hear it. And Dhritarashtra knew that Vidura is my best friend. He's my well-wisher, and everything he says is right. But then he would hear from Duryodhana. And due to his attachment to Duryodhana, he would always go along with him. What a troubled life he had. Even though he was sitting on the throne, he was the king, Dhritarashtra was nothing but miserable. Duryodhana was nothing but miserable. So they made another plot. Radhanath. It was a beautiful place. And there was a big festival to celebrate Lord Shiva that was coming up. It's like a vacation place. I guess, what is that place? Mahabaleshwaram, or wealthy people from Mumbai like to go there, and they have their homes there to kind of go on holidays. Well, Varanavata was like that. It was a very, very nice place. So let's send the Pandavas there and promise them a nice vacation, and they can celebrate this beautiful festival from Lord Shiva, and everyone will be so happy that they're there. So Dhritarashtra was inviting them there. It was all a plot. And Yudhisthira Maharaj, he was so respectful to his uncle, but in his mind he was thinking, why is Dhritarashtra sending us but not his own children? And why is he all of a sudden so nice to me? And he's offering us so beautiful vacation, holiday, and all. He says he's going to build a brand new palace just for us to live there, just for a vacation for some time. He was mysteriously nice. So Yudhisthira respectfully understood something's happening.